Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering One Piece, episodes 348, 349, and 350. Appearing from the sky, that man is the humming swordsman. Luffy's emergency situation, the ultimate shadow's destination, and the warrior known as the Devil, the moment of Oars' arrival. In these episodes, we find out exactly how the whole deal works with taking somebody's shadow away. And it turns out that I was like a little bit right and also a little bit wrong in terms of how that works. I'm still a little bit confused. I'm going to ask for clarification. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to the One Piece crew for commissioning this episode. I had to push back for personal reasons involving the puppies yet again, so I appreciate everybody's being patient on that. I really do. And I also wanted to mention really quickly, Florian had gotten in touch about doing some more wannabe episodes, and I have gotten bookings that block that time from being available because it's a little bit like more work to set up, it's more work to edit, and we want to talk for longer than an hour usually. But because I am dealing with having to pay for these puppies' treatments, I am thinking that I may just like add some extra time to a day or two here and there. So if you want to get in touch, I messaged this to you as well, Florian. I won't have any openings to do that until July, but I think you're like booked into July anyway, so it won't be that much of a wait. So we'll figure something out, but you just need to get the dates straight on when you want to have them. Okay, talking about these episodes, I'm really enjoying these still. I really enjoy there being like more lore. I'm not like a huge fan of lore as a rule. Like that can be a thing that certain people just get boners for really hard. And it's the sort of thing where I appreciate there being like rules, but I don't really get too into the weeds on it. Cause there's a reason the Silmarillion exists. Like, there are folks out there who just want to know every little thing. And I find it kind of fascinating the way that people get caught up in especially like fictional histories. But that said, this universe it's got its own lore for sure, but it also will kind of like throw everything into the air occasionally. And the addition of new lore is sometimes like quite confusing. For example, Luffy going to like Gear 2 and Gear 3. We saw that back at Enies Lobby. We haven't seen it since. It's not really explained well why he's able to do it. And that whole thing felt really like, I'm putting it out there because I want to be able to use this later, but I don't have it fully thought out yet. There's just a feel, and that may not necessarily be true, but the sense of it is extremely disorganized to me, and just kind of feels like it was poorly outlined on purpose so that they could go in whatever direction they sort of felt like later on. This is some lore that feels really direct. It's explained, and it's like, yeah, a lot of exposition, and I could see like some people getting a little bit irritated by that. Exposition is one of those things where a lot of critics and a lot of viewers will get really kind of snotty about having to include exposition in just like dialogue. There are times where I agree, but I am also somebody who really prefers to be working with as much information as I can. So I find it takes more to irritate me in that department than it does the average person. So yeah, this whole like deal with the shadows gets explained in a step-by-step way with questions being asked and answered in a way that I just really appreciated, because I was wondering a lot of these same things and not really getting what was, so it's a sort of a rare thing, and the show will just drop stuff sometimes, not explain it, and then they'll circle back ages later to explain it. I do appreciate this being explained within the same arc that it's happening in. You know what I'm saying? So, okay, appearing from the sky. We are, oh my God, you guys, it's fucking Funimation. Ugh. But I just had like the correct episode loaded. It was going. And then I just jumped into Funimation again. And it's just like, first of all, not only have we jumped to the next episode, but we have gone to the very end of it. So it's almost over. So the way that we start off, we had just left last time with Robin showing off that she can fly, with the spider monkey falling off the bridge, and all of our friends are like in this extremely sensitive position when we see a dude dropping down from the sky. And I was like, I feel like that's Brooke, but what the hell is going on? And we see that it is indeed Brooke, but the whole vibe is surprising. So let's start off with some things here, because you all know that I have to address what we've got going on with Nami. The thing with Nami and Lola, the pig, the boar, the hog, whatever they call her. Nami protests that Lola has nothing to worry about regarding her and Absalom, because she is actually a man cross-dressing. And you know what? I don't love this. I just don't like the very fact that it's like, oh, well, I'm a guy cross-dressing, so obviously I'm not a romantic possibility, is already just like, but maybe you still are though. Like, why not? And also the fact that I was kind of feeling relieved when this goes on and mostly focuses on Lola being relieved and what she's been trying to do to like capture Absalom. And it didn't seem like we were going to get any like further transphobic jokes or anything. But then there's a moment where we're in Topper's head and he thinks to himself, no wonder she looks so manly. Which is just one of those things that's like, there's this whole thing with transphobes where they really think that they can, quote, tell that somebody is trans. And it has led to this policing of the bodies of cis women as well, because there are cis women who fall well outside the lines of what we have decided is actually feminine. And so people will just jump down the throats of any woman who doesn't fall within those guidelines and accuse her of being trans when they're like completely incorrect. So it just goes to show how like blurred the lines with gender actually are, because appearance varies wildly. And just because somebody doesn't fall within your ideal doesn't mean that like you can tell anything about the rest of who they are or how they were born or anything. And it's just really like tedious that we have this moment of like, oh yeah, I can see it. And the irony of it being that he is saying that and we know Nami is lying. So he's doing the very thing of like, I could tell. No, you couldn't. Like, people can't. Just stop it, And it also like, even if you can tell that somebody is trans, fucking literally, so what? Like, so what? There's so much pressure on trans people to pass and be undetectable. And ew, you know, we're putting the same like gross misogynist expectations on trans women so that they get to be fucking miserable and self-conscious about the same shit cis women are. Oh, yay. What a delightful gift. Like, we would also like to be free of this. So can we please do our trans sisters a favor and not put them up to the same standard that we also are fucking sick of and don't want to be held up to anymore? Can we just not have this be a thing anymore? It's the same as like seeing masculinity as being a neutral. And so anybody who's non-binary is expected to perform like more masculinity in their androgyny than femininity, because androgyny almost is never particularly feminine. You know, it tends to be coded as very masculine. And so there's a lot of non-binary people as well who feel like they have to like perform this particular look for folks to believe that they are non-binary. And it's maybe just not their look, man. Maybe that's just not their aesthetic. And that's fine. So anyway, you know, I have to address that. But I was really grateful. That comment from Chopper seems to be it. And I don't know if it's going to come up later because I have to assume it will. But in these 3 episodes, that's the last of the commentary we get on the Nami is actually a man joke. And from here on, we have Nami pretending to be friends with Lola and like encouraging her to be more aggressive with Absalom. I loved this so much. There is no quicker way to my heart than having 2 female characters who are at each other's throats suddenly become friends. And this is a big favorite of mine with Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, by the way. But even though it's fake, you know, I know Nami is just doing this so that this maniac boar zombie creature doesn't try to murder her anymore. It's still just kind of heartwarming. Like, I just really enjoyed getting to see this creature who obviously is quite lonely be like connecting with Nami and trying to get advice from her and attempt to be vulnerable with her in a way. Nami tells her, like, you should totally hook up. You were made for each other. You see Lola's sword just hit the ground. And then we get Lola, and she's like, nobody has ever offered me a single word of encouragement this whole time. You don't know how much it means. And when... I love this so much. When Nami stands up and introduces herself, she calls herself Namizo, I think. But she holds out her hand, and in Lola's eyes, she's like surrounded by sparkles and in really sort of like foggy lighting. And she says something, Lola says, I'll hug him so hard that I almost crack his ribs, and he'll just be like, whatever about it. And I don't know why I think the transition for this voice actor is killing me so bad, because Lola has had all such exaggerated dialogue. It's been a lot of screaming, a lot of gruffness under her voice to sort of emphasize her fearsomeness and how aggressive she's being. And then all of a sudden, this scene with Nami, she sounds like Robin. She sounds like the same voice actress, and I'm not sure it is, but it doesn't sound like the same person. And I just find that really funny and sweet. And I love seeing Usopp and Chopper off to the side, watching the two of them have a conversation and be very nonplussed about it. I do enjoy too Chopper like buying into the fact that Nami is a man, and Usopp looking at Chopper and just saying, "Are you kidding me?" Like, he can't believe Usopp is falling for, or can't believe Chopper's falling for it, which is wild because Usopp tends to be just as gullible as Chopper is. But I think it's supposed to be, unfortunately, that he got a really, really good look at Nami in the shower, and he has no doubts on, that front. Whatever. But yeah, this bit is very, amusing. The two of them under this giant parasol just gossiping about Absalom. And Usopp hadn't even been sure it was going to work. And seeing how kind of flawless this is. They're under this parasol, by the way, guys, because they're sitting at a cafe table with a little parasol on the top. And Lola's head is mashed up underneath the parasol and moving it around every time she turns her head. It's really funny. This whole scene, transphobic jokes aside, I really liked the direction this went, because I didn't see it coming that they were going to be able to kind of weirdly be buddies. And y'all know that Absalom is just such a total creepster, and I hate him so much that there being this creature that's coming at him the way he's coming at Nami is extremely gratifying to me. So I'm just into it. And I love her saying, Nami says to Usopp, she's not such a bad girl. You just have to get to know her a bit. But when she turns and looks at him, she's got the berry signs in her eyes. So she was trying to question Lola about where the treasure might be in the castle. We don't really see any of that conversation. And I'm assuming based on the way that she looks here that she got some info on that, but we didn't get to see it. So we'll, potentially wind up finding treasure, or we'll catch Nami going off by herself in order to track it down. But as of right now, I don't know any more about it than I did before. So then we go to Luffy, and he is kept in this cage. This is the first time that he sees, what's his face? Help me out, guys. I keep forgetting the name of this big bad with the shadow stealing. But he is looming over Luffy, and in true form. I appreciate that Luffy has to just immediately be like, you must eat a lot, huh? You're pretty round. And isn't intimidated by this dude at all, because it's not that Luffy doesn't ever get intimidated. It's that he has a really different metric for what causes him to be intimidated than other people have. So I will be like, that feels really threatening. Yikes. And he'll breeze right past that, because that's not something he in particular needs to worry about. But then something that I'm just like, well, yeah, that's sort of how people work. Because he's a child and forgets about grown-ups and how they work, he will be taken off guard. So Gecko Moria, thank you, Demian. Demian says, I think the joke here is a continuation of the one where Chopper is both gullible and also terrible at identifying people because he isn't human and does not really have the brain features used by humans to identify each other. He can't tell that Sogeking is Usopp after all. I think that's part of the joke. Definitely. So we go to Perona, and she is watching them unload their entire ship. Y'all, this was so offensive to me. Truly crossing a line. They just got that ship. You know what I'm saying? It's barely been on the sea. And the fact that we are already getting completely looted, I am disgusted. Perona's mad because there's not treasure. There was some money laying around, but it's not what she was hoping for. And she is also a little bit like, if this is the guy who beat Crocodile and apparently went up against the world government, you would really think that he would have some money on him. I don't get what the deal is with being a pirate if you don't have treasure. That's the point of being a pirate. So what's the deal? And she has a bunch of zombies unloading, so she's talking to one of them about it. And they do have a ton of food, so that's all being unloaded. You guys know how, like, completely personally I take that also. I can't with the stealing of food, and I am exceptionally irritated already, especially considering that I know the food is all just going to be like poured onto tables and stuff because what's-her-face has this aversion to plates. So this is when Hilden flies down and says that the boss is calling for a meeting of the mysterious three. Straw Hat Luffy has been captured. This will be the debut of the 900. And we don't find out what the 900 is until later. But it turns out, spoilers, it is a giant, basically. A giant zombie. And I'm sure there's going to be other info we find out about it. But really, that's kind of all I need to know at this point. It is humongous. And the whole way the thing works with, like, stealing people's shadows is you take their, like, personality and abilities with the shadow. That's what gets sort of pulled out. And it gets put into a zombie, but the zombie's body is the limitation to the shadow's abilities. In other words, if you put Zoro's shadow into the body of a zombie that was, like, not as strong, he wouldn't be able to do what he does. We wouldn't see the zombie be able to fully exploit its abilities. And thus, the stronger the sort of, like, spirit or consciousness of the person that gets their shadow taken, the stronger a body you want to put them in. And what this dude, Gecko Moria, is thinking is that if Luffy has this incredibly high bounty, then he must have a lot of ability. So if we put his personality inside of this enormous giant, this will be like an unstoppable, like, killing machine that I can control. Which I'm really curious because, like, I know we have talked about the abilities that people have, like Sanji and Zoro, right? They're both really good fighters, but they have neither of them had a devil fruit. So their abilities are, in the rules of this universe, obtained through constant practice and dedication. It is not a magically endowed superpower. So if Luffy's power is via devil fruit, does that go with his shadow? Will this giant be able to stretch like rubber and have all of the same limitations? Because I feel like I don't want that. I feel for me, it seems as if the devil fruit affects people's bodies. It seems to me more than anything that their personalities don't necessarily change. Their goals and their abilities are based on what they can do physically. So personally, if I were creating this lore, I would think that that wouldn't work. But it's also not super interesting if it doesn't work. You know, like, I could see just being like, well, of course we're going to make it work. We want to see weird zombies with the same powers as our friends. Like, that's what we're here for. And I get that, you know, and I'm not even like saying that I would side eye it if it turned out that's how it worked. I'm just saying, like, there's a difference between doing what I think thematically sort of makes sense with the rules and doing what is the most fun. That, however, you could have some fun with the option of it doesn't go with the shadow, because Gecko Moria is operating with this assumption purely that Luffy has this incredibly high bounty because of his abilities. And I, at the time when their bounties were mentioned, I full on thought it was just, we're going to turn them in and get the money. It didn't occur to me that they were seeing those berry amounts and going, oh, well, if it's like that with these guys, then they definitely are worth stealing their souls. It didn't even occur to me. But if Gecko Moria thinks that Luffy is just a powerful person and doesn't get how much of it is from devil fruits, and it doesn't carry over with the shadow, seeing this giant with Luffy's personality but not any of his devil fruit powers is gonna be really... Oh dear, I just realized that we have all of the food from the Sunny that just got brought ashore. I feel like that food isn't long for this world. The amount that Luffy can put away in his fucking human body, human-ish body, is truly beyond belief. If he's a giant, then this entire island is about to just be eaten. Like... is he going to want to eat people? Is he going to be able to tell the difference? That's the thing, too, is like you can take a person's personality and their abilities with their shadow, but as much as there is a fraction of them that's sort of left inside, it's not fully aware of itself. And so not everything about their personality necessarily remains. It's just sort of their driving force. So Zoro's driving force is to sword fight. Sanji's driving force is to protect women. Luffy's driving force, I really feel like I don't want it to be eating. I want it to be to protect his friends, but also I'm not sure if he's going to be able to tell who his friends are anymore because everything gets sort of foggy. And we also find out that if the body of the people whose shadows have been taken, if the body dies, then those people, their shadows disappear as well. Like the shadow is only sustained by the living being who would have been throwing that shadow. And if it disappears, if the body is killed and the shadow disappears, the zombies just go limp and just collapse and are nothing anymore. They're just husks until you, I guess, put another soul into it. I don't know how long you've got before it starts to go bad. But so I found that really interesting because I think it's a spider monkey later who's explaining a lot of this stuff. Or no, it's not spider. Spider monkey starts like taunting them and telling them some things, and then it's Brooke eventually who like really gives them the information. And by them, I mean he's mostly talking to Robin and Frankie later on about all of this. So the whole deal with the shadows and the fact that like people have been separated from them, that has been sort of difficult for me. This is what I wanted to ask you guys about, because we have run into dudes who haven't got their shadows. But from what we have seen, taking the shadow supposedly like takes your consciousness with it. And yet we've still got guys who are wandering around without their shadows and seem to be themselves still. So is the shadow, does it just take like a copy of your personality and abilities? When it gets taken, initially, you get knocked out. That's how we saw Sanji and Zoro both just like on the floor, unconscious. And that is a side effect to having it removed, just like the shock of it. And then I'm assuming you wake up, because these other guys are up and they are awake and they're wandering around trying to find a solution to this problem, and they don't have their shadows, but they know what to do to get them back. So I guess that we're getting a copy and not a complete removal from the original body, which means that eventually our friends are going to wake up and maybe have to fight weird zombie versions of themselves, which would be a real trip. I would be down to see that. I'm just saying. So, okay, they're stealing all the food. I'm very irritated about it. Then we have Gecko Moria says that he is going to be the king of the pirates. And it's hilarious because you could not have thought of a more enraging thing to tell Luffy. The idea that you're going to try and take his spot. So it just gets like, we just get this close up of Luffy's extremely angry face from behind the helmet because he's still wearing that ridiculous armor that's like weirdly oversized. And then we cut away and I really wanted the immediate gratification. We find out later that he's just like, yeah, that is not going to be you. But I had sort of hoped that he was just going to explode. So we, of course, have to continue with the hide and seek from Absalom. He's wandering around also trying to escape Lola. And everybody is running away from Absalom as he's coming close. And they just jump into this like open thing and zip it closed. And all of a sudden, it stands up. And it's Kumasi. Kumasi the bear, whose back was unzipped for some reason and who is apparently hollow. Which, why not? Sure. You know, like, all right. And he was just like sitting around playing cat's cradle and then like has these people inside him, but nobody wants to listen to him. So he's trying to explain to everyone that they are inside of him. But he's very slow about like bringing the words. He is just not really wanting to like interrupt or draw attention to himself by talking beyond when he's allowed, explicitly allowed. So every moment that he begins to say it, he gets cut off by somebody, whether it's Perona or Absalom. And winds up just like keeping his mouth shut, and our friends are inside him as they are walking to see 900. And I have, been really pleased throughout all of One Piece at the turn that characters who seem to be antagonists have played in becoming eventually, if not friends outright, then at least allies in their way. And because Kumasi is treated so badly by Perona, I just really want him to get a little bit of his own back. And I would appreciate him switching sides. Just a little bit. It doesn't have to be like a whole, I'm going to join the crew now thing, like with Frankie. But I would like for him to realize that the people that are inside him who accidentally like jumped into his body and took it over in a way, I would like for him to realize like they're not being as mean to him as the people that he serves. But the problem is, I don't know how much control Kumasi has, because, a lot of these things are just being controlled. And Kumasi feels like he falls a little bit outside of what a lot of the other zombies are like, but it's hard for me to tell. So I don't know if he is even capable of that, like how much of his own mind he has left. Florian says, yeah, you have it kind of right in terms of how it works. Seraphim says, yes, it's just a copy. The initial knockout is just from the shock. Okay, cool. Florian says, this is Oda's way of the invisibility cloak, overhearing. Oh, yeah, that's a good point. That didn't occur to me. Like, you're giving me ideas now, Florian. I've been doing some things in the writing group on Discord where I'm posting like prompts for people to write, to like exercise their writing abilities and get themselves more in the spirit of writing with a bigger goal in mind. And writing a scene like that where you're trying to do an invisibility cloak, but you're not, would be a pretty fun prompt. Like, what's another way that you could do that? What's a way that you could be invisible for all intents and purposes and get the info that you need without there being the literal invisibility cloak? I'm going to think on that one, Florian. That'd be a good prompt. So anyway, this poor guy he's just a little bit goofy now because he is attempting to contain them. He doesn't want to get in trouble by revealing the fact that they're in there. So, he has the same sort of concerns about their getting caught that they do, because I imagine he thinks at first he wants to try and tell everybody, here's what's going on. But because they wind up being part of this, like going into the backstage area and seeing 900, I'm pretty sure he feels he would be in big, big trouble if they all popped out. And so at this point, he's just like ready to save his own skin. He doesn't want to fucking have a lecture. So he's just going to keep it to himself. So, all right, let's go over to Frankie and Robin, because they had been, in their bad way. She flies away. We had the falling swordsman, and then Frankie is like, well, I don't know where he came from, but I guess we have to go and save his ass. And then as they're talking, Frankie is still, by the way, like hanging off the edge of the cliff. Then we get the spider monkey back. And I realized while watching it this time, the monkey saying monkey, monkey is something that a friend of mine used to say all the time in that way. And I don't remember who it was, but I was like, why is this ringing a bell? And it must have been somebody who watched this show and this like kind of got in their head, because it was frequent and I didn't know what the hell they were referencing. It was just one of those things. So the first time that the monkey says it, I'm just like, God, this. And then I stopped and I was like, what do I mean this? Like, so many people do that? That's not a thing that people say. And it took me a minute to realize, like, oh, okay, that was a thing from somebody within the fandom before I understood what it even was. And they said it frequently enough that, like, probably at least 8 years later, I still remember that. But anyway, so Frankie is just like, well, I guess we are going to have to absolutely beat the shit out of this guy, keep the spider busy, and I'm going to do a whole thing. He says that he's going to build a spider smasher. Here's the problem, is that there are a lot of spiders, and they don't realize that quite yet, because they're not all giant monkey spiders. They are mouse spiders, spider mice. And there's this moment, you guys, where Robin decides that she is going to fight back against the spider monkey by making tons of her arms pop out of his face around his eye and smack him in the eye. Okay, I feel like we have officially crossed the line with what Robin can do. This is like horror movie shit. That is so upsetting. I mean, it's because of how small she is in comparison, right? How, like, can Robin change the size of her arms? I'm feeling like her arms come out of the spider's face the same size that her arms actually are, but the spider is just enormous, so they look tiny, right? I want to make sure I've got that right. Not that Robin can make tiny versions of her arms pop out of things, I think, right? I'm just curious if we know. But it doesn't necessarily matter. I just suddenly realized, like, I'm not sure if there's a restriction on that part or not. Florian says she grabbed a man's balls. We've been here, I think. Incorrect. Florian, grabbing a man's balls, especially considering everything that was happening, just felt like the right choice. This feels like she had to be real cruel and unusual with the way that she was thinking about how this was going to work. There's a creativity to this. Like, grabbing a man's balls, that's fucking basic amateur shit. I love that we have it. It's great. But to a degree, it's just like, well, yeah. This with the eye is just, it's like the thought she had to put into coming up with this. Ew. She's just basically like, what if my arms were eyelashes? Ugh. I hate it. Seraphim says, hey, if you can't do any real damage, just cause as much suffering as you can till it leaves you the fuck alone. Exactly. That's how, like, groups of birds work and whatnot. They just are like, oh, really? You think? No. And they are normal sized arms. Okay, cool. So she has his eye and she's like slapping his eyeball, and he reaches up to try and stop her, but doesn't think about the fact that he's got spider webbing in his hands. So he basically webs up both of his own eyes, which, it just ew to all of this. I hate it. Meanwhile, Frankie has decided to make a pair of nunchucks, but he has made each end of the nunchuck a piece of pillar from, like, the building. So it's these huge chunks that slam into this thing's head. And it's like wondering how the hell Frankie is doing this, because it did not quite appreciate how strong Frankie actually is. So Frankie is going to town on this guy. It's really funny, actually, because he's just like beating it into every different direction. And even though we see the body like moving out of the way, I think it's supposed to be that Frankie is moving so quickly that even as it slides from the hit in one direction, that he basically like catches it with the hit coming from the opposite direction, because he's just moving so quickly. And this creature is just like, I said, stop it already. And he uses sticky spider net, grabs the nunchucks out of Frankie's hands, and is then like, all right, so this is what's going to happen now. And this is when he's about to summon his guys. Frankie opens the gun in his arm and shoots at the guy. Still doesn't kill him, by the way. He's suffering. He's very unhappy, but it's not solved. And this is when we turn around and see that Robin has been gripped up by these spider mice. She apologizes for being careless because it didn't occur to her that there would be other spiders around. And she is like tangled up in such a way that like when she wiggles to try and get out of it, the camera zooms in on like her tits and the edge of her skirt. And I was just like, I don't know. I feel like this scene probably spawned a lot of fanfic. So Frankie is running towards her, like swearing that he's going to help. And then he gets hit with the spider stuff and is glued to the ground. But we find out later that this burns really easily. So he's able to get out of it without very much trouble due to him being a cyborg and that he has immediate access to fire, which most of us would not. So it works out quite well for him. But yeah, this spider monkey tells them all that there's like, I think he says another 500 of these spiders on Thriller Bark. So I have to imagine we are going to be seeing them again pretty soon. this is when Brook shows up. Brook with his fucking face, with his weird skull face. He says 3-verse humming, arrow notch slash. And he just closes his sword into its sheath. And we see the spider monkey basically scream and a bunch of blood gout up from its head. And that is the end of the episode. So now let's go to Luffy's emergency situation. The whole deal with taking his taking his shadow is sort of intercut with parts of the explanation and what's going on with everybody else. But here we have the conversation between Brook, Robin, and Frankie. And Brook is like, I don't know how to tell you this, but if your friends have already been captured, then probably it's too late. And I love Frankie yells at Brook, and Brook gets very upset at being yelled at. And then he says something about how he doesn't want to face such hostility. And he turns around and says, 'cause I don't have a face. And then just yells skull joke, which truly, every time he does one of these, it still gets me. It still gets me. I really do like it. It's like, by the mere fact of him irritating Robin, I enjoy it, because Robin is so unflappable a lot of the time. She just doesn't get annoyed that quickly. So when you see her be like, all right, can we fucking move this along? It's just a rare thing. And I think it's kind of funny. But yeah, he says, I thought that I had finally charted my escape from this demonic sea, but my rudder broke and I was cast even further into the depths of this world. I suppose it was about 5 years ago, in much the same way it happened to you. The island of Thriller Bark called out to me. I was desperate to escape no matter the risk, so I decided to take a chance and scour the island and hunt for parts to fix the rudder. And we get to see like a real fun sepia tone footage of him running away from zombies, from Cerberus, like, you know, the whole deal. And he's like, yeah, I miscalculated. This whole place was just full of zombies. They captured me. And this is the place where I saw something truly bonkers. There were other people who had been captured, and they brought this one dude before a corpse that was like all these different parts stitched together. And this guy was a dancer. And the way they have this scene is that he's got his hands above his head and his palms together and like wiggling his head from side to side in this like real weird sort of expression of dance that he just continues in the face of this horrible experimentation that is being done on him. He just keeps going. And I got to admire that. I really do. So, yeah, he explains about how the way that the shadow is ripped away. And it's kind of cool later on when we're watching Luffy's shadow get taken. The sound effect of the shadow being peeled up off the floor sounds like when you're unrolling packing tape. Like that kind of feeling of sticky peeling. It's very evocative, and it felt like it worked really well for what it was they were depicting. And I wondered how, because, you know, I'm not super familiar with the way things work in a lot of comics or manga, but I have to assume that there is like a sound effect included in writing when they do it. And I wonder if it's the same thing. But yeah, Brooks says it doesn't matter who the corpse belonged to. The shadows retain the characteristics of the person they were pulled from. So whatever your corpse is, it has to at least be like up to doing what the spirit was able to do. So this is, I just think that this is a neat, like, concept. And of course, this guy is like able to dominate all of these creatures and order them around, and they're completely under his control, which is a pretty big deal for somebody who wants to become king of the pirates. Just having like hordes and hordes of creatures that just do your bidding, that is going to be an advantage. There's just no way around it. So this, we have still our friends that are trapped inside of the bear. It's a kind of a drawn out sequence, but they're brought into the same room where they see Luffy and they see Moria. And somebody asks, I think it's Dr. Hogback is like, where are the 3 that I put in the coffin and sent out? And they realize like, oh, they're missing. That's really weird. But the bear does not tell them that they are inside of his body. He just keeps his mouth shut and sweats in the corner. I want to mention, honorable mention to Chindri. Is that how you say her name? But this is the girl who hates plates, and she just keeps on fucking up the vibe for Dr. Hogback in a way that's delightful. And also Absalom. She just keeps on being like, nobody would ever love you. Nobody wants you. I mean, why would they? Ew, look at you. No. You're both unlovable fundamentally. And you're just going to be alone forever. So you may as well just get used to that because you suck. And she is so deadpan about it. And she keeps blocking Dr. Hogback as he tries to sort of grandstand. And he's so mad about it. And I love the pettiness of that particular way of fighting back. I was like, the way that is played, it's just such a small thing, and you could almost be like, oh, it's not even on purpose, you know, but of course it is. I love that this character who makes no sense, like as just somebody who hates plates, it doesn't make any sense. And she's turning into one of my favorite little side characters. You guys, I'm just realizing, like, I haven't really at all touched on the start of the 3rd of these episodes. And I didn't realize I am basically out of time. You guys, I'm so sorry. I've been all over the place. I had to push this back, and now I'm like fucking up my time. I didn't usually, you know, I'm able to go pretty quickly when there's a lot of action, but I fucked it up this time. I really did. I'm going to have to kind of cover what happens next in the next episode. I'm so sorry, but I'm going to do my best to make sure that I don't leave anything out. Maybe I'll actually like take notes, and that way I can make sure to hit the points I want to hit. Oh, there's a bunch of stuff in the chat. Oda tends to be very on point with sound effects, as Seraphim. Demian says, you have no idea. Japanese has a million gazillion onomatopoeias, and Oda really loves them more than any other manga. The manga is filled to the brim with them for every sound imaginable. He especially loves to include drum sounds to highlight dramatic moments. That's fun. Seraphim says, pronounced Sindri. Okay. A very large amount of the Japanese names for devil fruits are onomatopoeias related to what they do. Yeah, I guess that's true, huh? All right, everybody. Well, I'm going to do better next episode. Please bear with me. I'm having so much fun is the thing. Like, I like these episodes so much that I wind up having a lot more to say about them than you would expect. So I am going to really attempt to get to the point a little bit more and not wander around so much in the next episode. Forgive me. I am going to clean it up. I promise. Thank you all so much for coming and for hanging out with me and giving me info. I appreciate you all so, so much. I appreciate your patience as well. And until next time, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.